was really excited to come into the MBR office this morning because YT have sent us a brand new Capra. It's not any old Capra either, this is the carbon fibre version, and it's the race version as well, which means it gets 170 mil of travel, not the normal 160 mil travel the bike comes with. So I'm betting it's going to be a beast. It's just about the longest travel, biggest hitting enduro bike you can get. Okay, so that's the bike out of the box. And before I talk about anything on the bike, I want to talk about the sizing because, well, I'll start again. I'm 6'1", and looking on the YT website, that says that I need to get the size XL, but I've actually gone for the double XL, the XXL, and that's because I just think it's going to fit me better. I've had a bounce on the bike. It doesn't feel like a gate. It feels like the right kind of size. So I've gone for the XXL. I'm also basing this on the fact that it has a 500 mil reach measurement. Now, I've sat on a Geometron bike that has the same reach measurement, and that was in the size medium large, they call it. They call it long and longest, and I reckon that was about the right size for me, so that's why I've gone for the XXL. A word of warning though, I have looked on the YT site and it does look like the double XL size is now sold out. So I don't know how useful that is, but if you're going for the XL size, I reckon you'd want to be in the region of 5'10" to 6'1" to make the most of that bike. I want to talk about the geometry as well on this bike, because on the website they've got some figures that I just wanted to compare with what I found in the real world, measuring it right now. I mean, they're kind of thereabouts, right? Like it's about 65-degree head angle, which is kind of right. The wheelbase is 1285 millimeters in real life. That's 6 mil longer than they say it is on the website. But you know, that's a good thing for me anyway. The BB height is really where it's different though. I've measured the BB height at 343 millimeters, and that's about 10 millimeters lower than they say it is on the YT site. So I'm not quite sure where they get that figure from. I've measured it in the low setting as well. It's not a bad thing. It's probably better. That makes it a really low bike. It's going to be really slow and it's going to be really low in the corners. It's going to make it really stable when you're cornering. So I think that's a kind of a good thing that they've done there. I want to talk about the chainstay length. That's here to here. On most bikes, when they grow a size, when it goes up through the sizing in a range, it's this measurement that grows. It's what we call the front center, and the chainstay measurement stays the same. So what happens is the relative position of the BB shell kind of changes as you go up through the size. And that can be quite annoying because it can change the way the bike feels. If you're riding in an XL and it's been designed in a size medium, it can feel totally different, like way longer in the front. But what YT does is they don't do that. It actually grows, the chainstay grows as the sizing grows. They have different molds they must do for the rear end of the bike, which is a really cool thing because you're going to get the same ride feel whatever size you pick. So even though the bike was probably designed around a medium or a large, it's going to feel good in the large and XL in the same way. There's one more thing actually I forgot, and that's the seat angle, the seat tube angle. I've measured it at 65 degrees, which is really slack by modern standards. Normally they kind of, we used to seeing bikes with a kind of like a seat tube up here, which is way better for climbing. I mean, look at where you sit on the bike. You sit here, look how far behind the BB that is, which I'm a bit worried will mean it doesn't climb very well. It'd be great if YT changed that kind of going forward, maybe next year or something. I think the idea was that maybe they wanted it to look like a downhill bike or wanted it to look like a proper gravity machine. So that's my guess as to why they did it. And the other thing to note about the geometry figures is the bike weighs 14 kilos. They don't have that information on the website. They say it's 13.5 kilos in size small, so you kind of have to work it out from there. But just in case anyone is interested, that's how much it weighs in XXL, it's 14 kilos. The shock on this bike is really interesting as well. It's the Float X2 from Fox, and the race version of this bike here is 10mm longer than the normal version. So they've added 10mm of travel, but they've got this not from changing the eye to eye position on the shock. They've actually got it just from increasing the stroke, and that's interesting because it means that the geometry of the bike is going to stay consistent for the race version compared with the other versions, which only have 160mm travel. So that's going to mean it doesn't pop up the BB height, and it's not going to be a quirky, a different kind of feeling bike to the other bikes in the range. So that's another plus point from YT there. At the other end of the bike is a Fox 36 factory edition fork. It's not quite the newest one. It's not the Grip 2 damper, the Fit 4 Grip 2 damper. But we know from testing in the past this is a really, really good fork, and it's probably going to suit the shot well too, I hope. It comes with one spacer pre-installed, but you get other spacers if you want to make it more, if you want a bike to ramp up more, if you want that fork to ramp up through its travel as you use it. So new things on the bike this year. The most obvious change is that they've put a flip chip into the bike. That means you can toggle it between two different geometry settings. You can have it in the low setting, which is in right now, or you can have it in the high setting. You just need to get like a 5mm in there, undo this, and then you slot you flip it around, and that makes the bike sit up slightly. That would be the high position. In terms of how much it changes the geometry, it makes a really big difference to the BB height. It pops it up when you have it in the high setting. It pops it up another 10mm, and I know it changes the head angle by 0.5 degree. It steepens it up when you put it in the high setting. That could be really useful actually, because it's so low and it's so slack. I'm wondering how it's going to fare in kind of modern trail running conditions. I think it might be a bit too low, and I might lose the front. It might wash out a bit because it's so slack. So I think I'm going to try flipping it between the two positions when I ride in Surrey, my kind of normal riding, compared with when I ride, say, in Wales and Scotland. So when I'm riding at home, I'm going to have it in a high position. And then when I take it somewhere gnarly or go to a bike park, I'm going to flip it into the low position. Hopefully that is all I need to do to it, besides adding a bit more compression and changing the rebound as well. The next thing to point out is the drivetrain on the Capra. You might call it a strange choice from YT when you first look at it, because they haven't gone for SRAM Eagle, like, is the easiest thing to do. They've actually gone with a Shimano XTR blend with an E13 crankset. The E13 cassette has a 9-tooth sprocket on it there, and that goes up to a 46-tooth sprocket there. So you're going to get the range of gears, provided you have a small enough chainring on the front, but you're going to get more ground clearance. I think you get something like 10 to 20mm more clearance when you're using the XTR mech compared with the 12-speed SRAM Eagle. Hopefully I won't lose my mech, I won't whack it off on a rock or something like that. If you ever want to change, if you ever want to take off this E13 cassette, maybe you want to clean it, or maybe you want to swap your wheels over or something, it's a massive pain in the bum. So you need to use two chain whips, you turn them against each other, you pull it apart, then inside there's a bushing, you need to take that off, and then there's a special locking nut in the old version, or in the new one, there's a clamp with a cinch bolt on it. You have to undo that, and then you can pull off the last 3 sprockets of the cassette. And then obviously you have to do that in reverse when you want to put it back on again. It kind of gets easier the more you do it, but it is definitely a technique you need to learn. The biggest drawback, I think, for me, for this bike, is I really like to ride a bike with a bottle cage. And obviously there are no lugs for this, and there's no space. Instead, you do get this really impressively low standover height. They've dropped this super low, which is great, but I don't know, I'd like to have seen it, maybe if they could have made a way to fit a bottle in here, maybe shaped it around here or something. Interestingly, there's a little kind of cutaway section in here that I'm wondering if it's going to fill with mud and water, but that's not a big deal. I was just going to talk about the components now quickly. The brakes are amazing. They are SRAM code brakes. They come with a carbon lever. They've got bags of stopping power. There are 200mm rotors on this bike. The bar is a Renthal fat bar carbon with a 35mm clamp. That's 800mm wide. So when you allow for the grips, the ADO grips on it, it's going to be 820mm wide. So I think I'm going to have to cut that down because I'd prefer it if it was about 780. Running back through the bike, there's a Fox transfer dropper post, which is pretty good. It comes with a 150mm drop, which is okay. For me, I think I can get away with it. But as you can see, when I built it, I've had to jack it up a bit out of the frame because it's not quite long enough for me. Usually with like a double XL bike, you'd expect, 170, 180mm drop or something like that. So it's not quite enough. The wheels on this bike are E13 TRSR carbon rim wheels. I think they are pretty compliant wheels. They're on that kind of spectrum. You get either really stiff wheels like Envy wheels, or you get quite compliant wheels like the Stans wheels. I think that's how these are going to perform. Likewise, this tyre, the E13 TRS Plus tyre, is kind of a slow feeling tyre with slow damping, and I think it rolls pretty slow as well. I think it grips really well, but it's gonna roll pretty slow. So I think I'm gonna change those out for something else. I might get some Maxxis tyres on there, just because I don't want the bike to feel really slow where I normally do my riding, which is in Surrey. So when this bike was launched about a year ago, there was no other competition, no other 29ers with single crank forks, so not downhill bikes, with 170mm travel and 29er wheels. Now there are 3 bikes that you can choose from that come with 170mm travel and 29er wheels. The Scott Ransom tunes, the Scott Ransom 900 tunes is the bike we tested. And that's a pretty interesting bike because you can dial the suspension down from 170mm to 120mm with one of the levers on the bar. So that could be quite a useful thing if you're racing. And then the white bike, probably the best thing about that bike is just how good value it is. It's the same kind of price as this bike, as this direct sales bike. But the difference is you can actually sit on that bike and you can see it in bike shops before you buy it. So that's what this YT Capra is up against. So straight out of the box, those are my initial thoughts on the bike. Obviously there's no substitute for actually taking it out onto the trails and riding it, so that's going to be my next thing to do. Let us know what you think about this bike. I'm going to let you know what I think in another video in a few months' time, because it's my long-termer, so I need to put some miles into it. And it'll be really interesting to see how my thoughts change on it and whether I do actually make the changes I'm thinking I might make. So that's it. Please subscribe, watch more of our videos, and look out for the update coming up soon. That's it.